do the application to do this, you can already like start doing these, right? If you're doing research, you can already talk about what you're doing. Or if you're doing volunteering, you can already talk about what you're doing. So you don't have to wait until the application is available for you to actually fill all of this out. So again, it's just basic contact information for the most part, but the most important thing are hours per week / total hours that you put into the organization and what the content of the actual activity. You want to mix in, you don't want to just describe, if you're a volunteer for instance, you don't want to just say, oh, I followed doctors around or I followed hospital staff around, I did this and that. Like, you want to be more descriptive and talk about a little bit about what you gained from it, because you want to show insight. Because anyone can volunteer, anyone can just be like, you know, an intern at a hospital, but you can always talk more specifically about what you got. Like I saw patient interaction was between physicians, and I thought it was valuable somehow. Make it more detailed. For most meaningful, you have 1325 characters, so that's roughly twice the amount. So it's about less than a page single spaced. And this is an example. So close to half a page single spaced. This is just another example.
So just as summary, schools are looking for dedication, consistency, and leadership. So those are some of the things you really want to highlight in your activity section. Each activity should have a purpose on your application. Don't try to fill in all 15 slots if it's not something that's going to show something about yourself as a medical school applicant.
Again, the point of consistency is important. It's much more important for you to, for instance, if you're shadow for 2 years or 1 year or a couple months as opposed to doing it only once. You want to show longevity, so if you're part of a club, keep going with it. And also, like, don't just do things because you think it's going to look good on your application. Do it because you're truly passionate on it, because when you're interviewed, schools can see right through it. If you're just doing it just to put it on your application, schools can see that. So at the same time, you want to make sure you're well-rounded, so that you want to make sure you have experience with research. You want to make sure you have experience with like volunteering and things like that. So you want to make sure you're well-rounded as a student, but also be sure that you're doing it because you're passionate about it as well. And again, being a part of a club for 3 years stands out much more than just being a general volunteer for a year, right? So, and then leadership and so on.
So the personal statement, again, this is like one of the areas where probably the most important part of your primary application that your MCAS application that you'll be sending in. And it, the 5,300 character limit, it's a pretty short amount, about a page single space.
Yeah, it's a page and a half single space, but yeah, 5,300 characters.
And so, and then again, this is something you want to take at least a month to start drafting. So if you're thinking about submitting in the first week of June, when you're first allowed to submit, you want to start no later than the first week of May. You're going to go through at least 10 drafts, sending it to professors, to English majors, and in real context that can give you valuable feedback from the application.
Yeah, so I sent it to like my English teacher and things like that. Like, send it to a lot of people. They don't have to necessarily be within medical school or in medicine. Send it to someone for a fresh set of eyes on what they think. And again, make sure in the essay talk about like why you're interested in medicine and why medicine and why not like be a nurse, for instance. Because a lot of people can say, I want to be a healthcare provider, but you can do that as a nurse, you can do that as a PA, you can do that. There are a lot of different ways to be a healthcare provider. Why be a doctor?
So I mean, there are also other services, professional services that can read and edit your application. So you can consider that. They're pretty expensive compared to obviously having food done by a professor or somebody so again, don't like procrastinate on this statement. You need it at least a month to get several drafts turned around. You're going to rework the statement. Make sure you have somebody who has a very strong grasp of English to check for grammatical mistakes, because those are going to be a red flag.
Yeah, so schools are going to look at this, and if you make any like grammar errors or English errors, especially in this in your activities section, they're going to be like, this guy didn't even put in like 110% on their application. How is he going to, or how is he or she going to be able to put 110% into being a medical student and being a doctor if they can't even get this part like fully accurate? So they're very critical. So make sure you have no mistakes. Next slide.
So last steps are, after you get the personal statement done, you're going to be ready to submit your MCAS application. The last steps are really just designating the schools you're going to be applying to, but hopefully before June, you'll have already gone through the list and selected the schools you're going to be applying to, so you can immediately enter those. We were just talking about, and this is an important point, before the meeting, that some schools automatically automatically send you secondaries.
As in they don't screen, they don't look at your numbers or anything, they'll just send you an automatic secondary. Generally private schools. Public schools, specifically the UCs, most of them screen, so they'll have a specific cutoff, so if you don't have like a certain number, they'll screen you at that point and you won't be moved forward.
So personally for me, you want to submit your MCAS as early as possible. It's I think integral to your success as an applicant, and it's echoed everywhere. You need to turn it in the first 2 weeks of June. If you're not, I guess if you don't have the super stats, which most people don't, then you need to submit it as early as possible because of the rolling admissions process, which means, when they're looking at, so I applied in August, but when you send them the secondary and they're giving out interviews and they only have one more interview to give out for 100 applicants that come out in August, it's going to be pretty hard to get your application like that and to move forward in the process.
So just another point, applications open in May. In June is when you can actually submit. So keep in mind that there are tens of thousands of people who apply, 20, 30,000 people who apply to medical school, right? So you're going to be competing amongst that bunch. When you send in your primary, it will be sent to Washington, D.C., and they'll check your transcript and the information you inputted on your application to make sure it's accurate, and that process can take a couple weeks to a month. So if you apply the first week of June, your application is going to be verified, which is the checking process. It's going to be verified and sent to schools within a couple of days. But if you apply like mid-end of June, it could take months, 1 month. If you apply middle of July, end of July, it could take 2 months. So it could take a long time. And think about how many people have applied during that time while you wait. So you really want to be ready to go June.
Yep. I remember last time, Dr. Dave Tran,
right.
He was saying how generally if you have okay stats, you don't want to apply right away because most people are waiting until June just to turn in. Or,
right.
Yeah, like you want to turn you say you want to turn it in around July if you have okay stats to get on super.
So I would say I wouldn't wait necessarily till mid-July, but up until that point I'd say it's okay. Again, interviews are rolling, and the only people I've seen successful that applies late, I'm talking about mid-June, mid-July, August, people with really high stats. I had a friend that had a 43 on her MCAT in 3.9 something, almost 4.0, gone to every single school, all the IVs that she applied to, but she had great stats. So maybe not apply the first week of June, but don't wait on either, because again, rolling interviews, so you want to make sure you have the best chances. So don't necessarily push it back to July just because of the early July. Don't push it later than that.
Secondaries are very time consuming. And if you apply to a lot of schools, you're going to get a lot of you're likely going to get a lot of them back, especially with private school like me. So just again, plan your schedule so that you have enough time to attend to the application cycle. It's just very time consuming in the fall, summer in the fall.
Right, in secondaries, you want to generally turn around within 2 weeks. So you can pre-write. Some of the secondaries are listed on studentdoctor.net, so you can go on them and they'll list like previous year secondaries. Very few of those actually change from year to year, so you can already start writing as it, like right now if you need to. But keep in mind that a lot of schools that you're applying to aren't going to be screening. So if you apply to 30 schools, the moment your application is verified within that week, so if you're applying in like mid-June say, and you're verified mid-July, within mid to end of July, you're going to be hit with like 20 secondaries. So you can imagine how tough that would be, right, to be able to fill up. And mostly secondaries have not only one, but multiple essays. So they're shorter than the personal statement, but there's a lot you still have to do basically. So try to get ahead as much as possible, pre-write if you can, and then just turn it in at like, you know, a day or two if it's ready to go when you're submitting it. So these are just a couple more resources. AMC is that application service, so they have a lot of information there. There's also a handbook that's useful as well. Siobhan, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, so...
It's supposed to say Harvard, by the way.
This is...
Just checking if you all are asleep by now.
So this was this book really just helped me think through the admissions process. But you should try to look at, you know, different handbooks. They have different credibilities, and you just have to do some research. This person is an admissions consultant, and one of the more popular books for to take you through the admissions process. It you know, it gives you a peace of mind. It just gives you important tips and facts to consider. But the AMC also has important information. So you know, learn as much as you can about the application process. Just be very proactive about it. And
yeah, so we're not paid or anything to say, you know, advertise for these books or to help us, you know, resource schools and that, get more information or whatnot. So we thought that it was useful. Do your research, use a lot of resources, learn as much about the process as you can. The earlier you learn about it, the more prepared you'll be. Everybody okay with this slide? So life happens, right? So not all of us have perfect GPAs, not all of us have perfect applications. I mean, there's so many steps along the way in which you could trip, right? Like from GPA, from MCAT, to, you know, leadership or things like that. Like there are so many steps along this way where it makes it really difficult. But if being a physician is truly what you want to do, persevere and keep at it, because don't give up on your dreams just because you may not have the numbers. There are so many different options that you can do to help mediate some of the factors, right? So there are postbacks that you can do if you have low GPAs and things like that. So make sure that you continue, like for me, like when I was in the library studying, like it gets really monotonous and you're kind of like bored half the time because like it's just information, you're just having to understand it and memorize it, right? So it's a lot of information, but be sure to mix in with some volunteering just so that it makes things relevant. Like if you're shadowing a physician, it's like, hey, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm studying so hard. It's because I want to become a physician and I want to be able to give back, and you know, things like that. So keep that in mind. Again, numbers are not everything. They're a lot, and schools generally look at that first, but it's not everything. And that's where extracurriculars and all of that come in. Just keep in mind that try to balance your schedule so that you can accommodate all of that so that your grades don't suffer, because if they do, then that might take you out of the running, right? So just be careful with that. So without, if there's no other questions, please give Siobhan a round of applause.